Hello and welcome to my tutorial where I make Twoie, also known as Audrey II from Little Shop of Horrors. I needed to put 20 hours of work in a 20-minute video, so we are gonna go fast, but this is how we do it. Here's the supply list, so write down fast. We have some floral tape that we use. We have green paper from Walmart, just a pack of green paper you can buy there for like $5. And we have some wire, some 12 gauge wire that I use for the stems, and we have some Glossy Mod Podge, that's for the leaves. Now I do have an array of clay tools. You don't really need all these, you can find stuff from around the house. This is the original Sculpey that I used. I buy it in 8-pound boxes because I use a lot of it. We need foil for the inside of our Twoie for his skeleton. And I also have Instamorph. Instamorph is a great product. It's a plastic that you heat up and then it gets really soft and moldable. Find it on Amazon. So we're using that. And then I have Plaster of Paris. We're gonna use this in the base of Twoie. Again, some Glossy Mod Podge. I also use matte Mod Podge to glue my leaves together. And the wire that I use for the stems and also for the frame of his tongue. A fish bowl to shape Twoie. Had to dump fish in the toilet. Just kidding. I use a standard heat tool, heating gun that I used for stamping when I used to do stamp embossing. Then this is my little container that I use the Instamorph in. I just put it in there, use my little stick to heat up the Instamorph. Wanted his mouth to be all glossy and juicy, so I used some of this here resin. I have a Made in America 1/2-inch PVC pipe that I cut with my gardening shears. Cut size. Use my heat gun to shape it. Let me apologize for my tutorial. I'm good at art, not tutorials. So sometimes I have some bad camera angles. I have some sound in the background. I have children, so I don't get the luxury of recording in silence. So I have random paint here, all kinds of brands. It's acrylic, and then I have some paint pens. But this is the important stuff right here. Some Jelly Bellies and some Limeritas, essential for the process. Okay, so using my clay, I make a little base for this small fishbowl thing, and then I cover it in foil. Everything has to be oven safe, so glass and foil is pretty safe. And I shape it out a little bit. I don't want him to be exactly round, so I give him more of an oblong shape with the foil. Roll out my clay, as you see here, and start putting it on top. This is going to form the base of his head, and I do it for the same thing for the bottom of his head. I cut little triangles out of the side so that it rounds the clay better. Use my fingers to roll the clay up to start to make a lip shape. Some kissable lips in this guy. And I got a lot of my inspiration from Board Panda. There was someone on there that posted pictures. They made a Twoie. They made him out of a lot of different materials than me. They started with like a porcelain egg and plaster, but Cassiopeia, I think is his name, Cassiopeia. But he did a great job, and I got a lot of tips and ideas from him. So here I am fine-tuning the shape of our first half of Twoie. So making that lip, and then I make these little string things in my vines. Just do like a grid pattern, but I make sure that with the skinny ones I don't put them on straight. They have a lot of curvature to them. And then I put a piece of saran wrap on his lips, and I use my little tool to make little lip lines. The saran wrap just makes it a little bit of a softer line as opposed to a hard carved line. So I use that to make him extra kissable. This little silicone tip tool is probably my favorite clay tool. I use it the most out of anything there, and you can get it at any craft store, art store, Amazon. And here's his lips after I take the saran wrap off. Don't bake with the saran wrap. So I just use a tiny little tool. Again, you can use anything around the house as clay tools. Just don't use anything that you also are going to use for food again. A secondary supply would be a little bit of rubbing alcohol. This just, when you put it on, it smooths the lines, smooths the edges, and dissolves any of the little sticky up bumpy things. This is optional. You don't have to do this. I'm sure he'd look awesome without this tiny little detail. All right, so then I baked it. After I baked that in half, then I made a nice little foil insert for the inside of his head. And then I covered it with a sheet of clay, blended it all in. I left a ridge or a bump for his gum line for where his teeth will be. And then second half's done, made it the same way as the first. Tried to put it on backwards, didn't work, flipped it around. Okay, there, now he's got both his lips up there. Just seeing how it's gonna fit together. And polymer clay is awesome. After it's baked, you can do a lot of things to it. You can sand it, you can carve it. It's kind of like carving hard soap. Then I made a bunch of these little guys. They're like little carrot things. These are gonna be like vein things in his mouth that are gonna go to his teeth. Oh, and I made that little decorative back throat thing. You could make it however you want. This is a monster plant, so there's no right or wrong when you're designing the inside of his mouth. It's completely yours. And then I made like a sweet little heart thing for the other side of his mouth. Isn't that cute? So lovey. Again, putting all these little carrot things in, using my knife, just kind of chop them to size after I put them on. Using my little tool to blend them all in. You probably don't have to blend them all in. They would look fine if you didn't blend it perfectly in. Now I'm using random caps from things around the house to make the little tooth gums, just little round things that I'm gonna insert the teeth in. Making the teeth right here, I'm not pushing them down in and connecting them right now. I'm just kind of setting them in there to shape, see if I like the shape, what size is good, make sure I have the right number of them. Then I'm gonna bake all the teeth so that they're really hard. That way when I insert them into the soft clay, I can push as much as I want and I'm not gonna deform the tooth. So have my special little tray, that was a special one for my polymer clay, so I don't use any of my kitchen stuff that I'd use with food. I made these little vine things for inside of his mouth and I broke them all off when I was painting the inside of his mouth, so disregard those. Here I'm making the tongue, shaping it with some wire and then with some foil on top. I leave the little tail ends of the wire so I can stick them down in the mouth. Roll out some clay, put on the bottom of the tongue, roll some clay out, and then put that on the top of the tongue. Yeah, both sides of the tongue. This video's going so fast, I hardly have time for jokes. Anyways, I carved out a little dowel, little end, so that I had this little circular thing. You can use anything you have to texture it. You can even use like a dish rag to texture it. But then I used a tiny little poker and just made more little details and just poked all over his tongue to give it a nice texture. Then once the teeth were done baking, I inserted them all deep down in his gums. Can push as hard as I want in there because I won't deform the teeth. All right. And then just use my tool, kind of blending a little bit. Now I'm going to put the two heads together. And if I had to do it again, I would have probably figured out a way to attach them without polymer clay so I could paint the inside of the heads before they were joined, because it became really difficult to paint inside once his head was all completely assembled. So then he goes into the oven for his third and final bake. And I did put a couple little dowels between his lips because I was afraid that his mouth would close a little bit when it baked. I honestly doubt it would have, but just on the safe side. After blending all of the back of his mouth and the back of his head with that joining piece of clay, I baked him. Now I'm using my PVC and this bent surprisingly well. I used my heat gun. I was shocked at how quickly it softened and how easy it was to bend. So, yay! Then I use my heat gun to heat up the Instamorph. Again, I have my little cup here and my heat gun, and then I pull it and swirl it into long stringy vines and wrap it around. Here I put a little bit of the Instamorph there to round out that corner so it wasn't such a hard corner. And I use my little finger things I got with a glue gun just to help, because for the first 5-10 seconds after I heat it up, it is quite hot. So that helps to have those little finger things on there. I don't like burning myself. I just keep wrapping around, keep adding to it, wrapping around. You really probably, yeah, my kids noticed that I was recording. You really probably could just paint the PVC and it would still be awesome fine. The reason I didn't use polymer clay for this part is because you can't put PVC pipe in the oven. So you can use an air dry clay if you wanted. That would work out fine. But I like the Instamorph. It's a fun product and It's definitely durable, super hard, paintable. You can actually add paint to the Instamorph while it's moldable if you wanted to do that. That's kind of fun. If you check out Instamorph on Amazon, the reviews are kind of fun because there's a lot of people using the Instamorph to make real teeth for their real mouth. Methods. I'm sorry if I offended you if you're a meth head. Or I'm sorry if you've made fake teeth for yourself and you're a meth head. I didn't mean to offend anyone. My apologies. This was a long, drawn-out process because of the constant having to heat the Instamorph. I did try putting a container of it in the oven to see if it would be more efficient that way. It sort of worked, but it wasn't any better than what I was already doing, so I just kept with my current process. So here is the stem all done, and that was me looking at the camera, and I haven't painted it yet. Here's Twoie. I drilled a hole in the back of his head with a real drill the whole time I was doing it. I was saying, please don't break in half, please don't break in half. But even if it did, I would have just put it back together, put it in the oven again, and started over. So I don't let things slow me down like that. So here is Twoie sans paint. So he's starting to look like Twoie. He's coming together. Yes, size of a human head, apparently, maybe in a ham. And here we start the painting. When I paint, I always use a minimum of 3 colors. I'm going to use a dark color, a medium, and a light, typically of the same color range. The dark, I use that first on the inside too. This tore up my paintbrush. Don't use one of your best fancy paintbrushes. But I never throw a paintbrush away, even if it gets mangled, because it makes a great texture brush. So I did the dark color first, gives a lot of depth. Then I go in with the fuchsia color and paint around the gums. I was trying to avoid the teeth at first, then I realized that was impossible, so I just let it go. Let it go. Singing is for sure not my talent, but I don't let it stop me. So you can see those teeth, they got pretty painted. I'm just gonna paint like 100 coats of white over top of the teeth when I'm done here. So this wasn't fun. I did not enjoy painting inside his mouth because it was so hard to get all the angles with the tongue in the way and the teeth in the way. But there's a little pause spot so you can see some good detail in there. Those really dark colors gave it a ton of depth. Started with painting the Instamorph a medium green, and now what I'm doing is going through with a darker green and painting the recessed areas and in between the vines, just giving it a lot of depth and detail. It's not hard work, it's just detail work that takes a bit of time to do. Then I go with my medium over the head of Twoie, just painting that medium. And it looks really flat when you do this. That's why you want to have multiple layers of color to give it a more realistic feel. I feel like a lot of people can do this, they just don't know the steps to make them look more real. You can make Twoie, you really can. This is just a bunch of little broken down steps besides painting inside the mouth. It's a pretty easy project. Sanding the lips where I got paint on it just so it doesn't show through that beautiful salmon color. Mixing my paints there. I wanted it to be more of a corally orange color. Again, I have lights, darks, and mediums on there. Starting with the dark color to be shadowy, and then I'm going to add the medium pink on the other side. Make sure that I have him right side up so the shadows are in the right spots. I use that beautiful, this is a nice Mary Kay color called Blood of Man. Just kidding, I made that up. But then I use the pink, the light pink, as his highlights. Oh, look how kissable he is. He's super smoochy. I say his name is Twoie, it's not, it's Smoochy. After this part, I'm gonna let that dry, and I'm gonna plant his stem. So got some rocks in there, put the stem in, use some painter's tape to put the stem where I want it to be. His head is not attached right now because that would be too heavy. Use my Plaster of Paris, mixed about 4 cups Plaster of Paris with 2 cups of water, and then dumped that inside the container. I did it in 2 batches because my container wasn't that big. And then I make sure to stomp him down so that the Plaster of Paris kind of goes into the rocks. All right, now I'm using the dark. With the dark paint, I water it down quite a bit because I want it to seep into the lines and settle in the cracks in the veins. Okay, then I mixed my light green, and I use yellow to lighten it, not white. If you use the white, you're gonna get a really like pastel-y colored green. So if you want more of a bright green, you use the yellow to brighten it up and lighten it up. And then I dry brush this on because I don't want it to go into the cracks. So I barely have any paint on my brush. I am just dry brushing that on. Then I dry brush the stem as well. Now I'm connecting the head with Instamorph. I put a little bit of the heated Instamorph on the PVC when I shoved it into the back of his head. Now I'm just wrapping it around, and I'm leaving some stringy, swirly pieces to look like vines, like you can see there. So I wanted it to be really strong because his head's really heavy. Onto the leaves. I used my Cricut machine to make the leaves. I ended up, again, using 8 for the head, 3 for the bottom. Some of these darker ones with the holes in it, I didn't use all of them. I only used 3 of the dark, big ones with holes in them. And my Cricut machine can cut these out. It's pretty convenient. Now you can do it like this, just fold paper in half, cut out your leaf that way, and then just trace a duplicate for each one, because I did sandwich them together with the wire inside. So this is the option you can use if you don't have a Cricut machine. That's fine, and they'd probably actually look more organic. So again, this is just cardstock that I use there. Here we go, leaf assembly. Cricut, hard at work. Had to move my camera so that the Cricut had room to move, and use my Mod Podge to put them together. This is the matte kind, just because I didn't want to use all of my shiny kind on the inside of the leaves. And I used, once I put the wire inside, I used my boning tool to make the wires stand out more by smushing the paper down. My 12-year-old self comes out when I say boning tool. In all seriousness, go to Hobby Lobby, buy some leaves, paint some little purple vines on them. Save yourself tons of trouble by putting all these leaves together. It was all right. I liked painting them more than I liked assembling them, but it took forever and forever. It wasn't that many leaves, right? It's like 11 leaves. Okay, so painting them is more fun. And I use the same colors that I used to paint Twoie. When I have my acrylic paints out, you see that little bottle there, the little purple bottle? It's just water, and I'm always spritzing my acrylic paints to keep them wet because they dry really fast, and I don't like that. So I'm always giving them a little spritz. But here on the leaves, on the dark ones, I used a light color in the middle. On the light ones, I used a dark color in the middle. Kind of switcheroo there. And I'm doing a pouncing action. I'm using my brush and just kind of tapping, not brushing. I'm just like stab, stab, stab. I use my paint pen to draw his veins, his really cool purpley veins on there. I can't get my son to be quiet, I'm sorry. He just keeps talking and playing, which is fine, right? Why should I get to talking, not him? Anyways, this was fun. I liked drawing the veins on. That was a good time. I like that they're purple because he's a blood drinking plant. So there's blood running through his leaves. It's really fun. Make them organic. Try not to make them too patterned looking because the human eye can pick out patterns very quickly and easily. So just be wild all over the place with it. Then after I was all done painting my leaves, I used the Glossy Mod Podge and coated them all in this. That gives them that luster and that shine. Makes them look a little bit more real. I also shaped them too. Nobody wants a stupid flat leaf. So I shaped them first. That way the Mod Podge would help them hold their shape over time. And then I used my floral tape and wrapped up the stems. This mean green mother is almost done. So I used the wire, wrapped it around, put a little paint on the wire so it blended in. Now I'm gonna do the resin and make his lustrous, juicy lips and mouth salivating because he's hungry. I'll say it, feed me. I couldn't go through the whole video and not say feed me. So, first time ever using resin, but I didn't know what else to use to make his saliva. I wanted to actually make it so they had saliva connecting lines, you know, like the drips connected from teeth to teeth, but I couldn't figure it out. So, then these I did buy from Michael's, and they're just little viney things using Doc Martin's paints, his acrylic, liquid acrylics. in my airbrush. You could have spray painted these too, or you could just not have these all together. Totally optional there. And then I cut them off of those stems, and the stems had wire in them, so that I shaped those stems kind of like little hands, and then covered them in my floral tape so that I could put them in there and give Twoie like little kind of hand vine things. And there are my monsters, my little minions. Oh look, they noticed the camera again. That was an eye. Thank you, children. Thank you so much for blocking the camera. The moss that I put in the top of the pot, I also spray painted that, so it's bright green. So here we have it. Twoie is completed and finished in full form. My 3-year-old won't touch him. My 5-year-old would sleep with him in her bedroom if I let her. But it was a lot of fun. It was exciting. You guys have been so amazing with all your wonderful compliments on Facebook, Instagram. You guys are really awesome. So thank you for making me feel so good about the project I completed. I really hope that you try to make a Twoie. It starts with believing you can. If you never try, then you're never gonna make them, but give it a shot. Thanks guys, hope you enjoyed, and happy Halloween.